oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? It's awesome. They're power cards. Give me some power. Secret Bitewing game. What do you need to know before you buy, before you back? Where is it? Secret Dr. Reiner revision of one of his 2005 classics, Beowulf. Now we've got a space theme, ego, a giant ego on the board here in front of me, because it's an Extraterrestrial Greeting Organization, along with Interstellar Interludes and Interruptions expansion, which offers some modularity to go with it. Now, what do you need to know? 2 to 5 players, a little bit of press your luck bidding style auction negotiation-ish. Oh yeah, they know who to send it to. Let's talk. Truth be told, there's a whole heck of a lot going on these boards iconography-wise. Don't fear. The first thing that you need to know about this is the iconography is incredibly intuitive, but those words to describe this game or any inkling that you have of the 2005 Beowulf may be also slightly off-putting. So let's address the elephant, the ego, in the room in that way, right? So auction-esque press your luck bidding style game. More dynamic depending on the player count. 2 to 5 different people are going to be simultaneously going around converting, pressing their luck, drawing cards ad nauseum, trying to decide when to press, when to pass, and how long on this journey do you have. If you are not aware of the previous game, let's just start afresh, because truth be told, I was never even aware of Beowulf, right? So this was complete blank slate for me. I am not comparing it to the predecessor. I'm saying, what does this do? On a turn-by-turn basis, you're going to have a set of cards that are in your hand of up to 5 different types of suits. And they're going to be the 4 main suits that are represented on the board, and 1, the pink, which is wild. We'll talk about what the numbers mean on them later. That's a tie break. But essentially what you're doing is you're moving your ship just column-wise on each of these boards. Left to right, top to bottom, and finishing the board. And then going down to the next board, rinsing and repeating, going through each of these sections simultaneously as you make your way through the universe, trying to get to the end when the aliens are here. You're trying to end up with the most of the green bling, the green victory points, essentially, is what they are. You're going to obtain those, though, by outmaneuvering, outbidding, outdiscarding your opponents, but also while navigating not to offend the aliens too much. You can be charismatic, but you can also be adult. The outtake, you didn't see me hit the microphone and turn it off. But then you're also going to be spending your credits and your cred, literally money, to get other things along the way. The last token element wise, really token, is you have a bag here of alliance tokens, and they all have different sides on them, but they have the same other icons that you're seeing. It's just that you don't know what other people may have, so you don't know which one they may be able to spend where. You're just randomly drawing those from the bag, though, throughout the game. So the general premise overview out of the way, how do you actually play this game when you're traversing your super ship across each of these individual areas? And there are going to be 2 areas that are always starting and ending. That is the solar system, where we are coming from, and that is the arrival. This is organized just for spatial reasons, but you can do it however you want. There is also a 4th of the optional boards that is available as well, and that you do not use on a game-by-game basis. This is also modular, so this could be in any way that you so choose. If you wanted to swap, say, the purple and the red here, you could very easily do that to get a different dynamic of the game. The 3 others, the purple, the green, and the yellow one I just showed you, are relatively more positive. The red is bad. Bad stuff happens. So as you're traversing this, there are several different types of events. Let me run you through these types of events really quickly, and then I'll give you some gameplay example off of 1 or 2 of the boards. So we'll just break down solar system here for you so you can just kind of see. Whatever's in the upper left-hand corner, you get when you approach that board. So in this case, you're going to get 5 cards. Then you have the option to discard 2 cards, to draw 2 more cards from the big old deck here. So what you're doing with the risk here is risk is on every board. Risk is actually also during the empowerments with these wheels that we'll talk about in a second. And risk is the main make it or break it, push your luck, random crap thrown your way style of things. That's easily the biggest. This is going to be not something you don't mind, or this is going to break the game for you as a whole. Let's talk about that risk for a second. If you draw 2 cards off the top of the deck, you are looking for, in this case, on this board, ones that will match these 2 symbols. If I do not get the 2 symbols there, I only get to keep them if they match. So if I match both of them, for example, right here, I see that, oh, this matches and this is a wild card, so this would be a match. So I would not suffer the offense. But if I tried for the next player to go ahead and do this, well, look, I get to match again. But let's say then the third player goes and they only match one of the symbols. Now what happens is they get to keep the card that matches, but they discard to the discard pile the card that does not match. And then, because they offended the aliens, they would take 2 of these offense tokens and put them on their sideboard. And why that matters here is you can see that with the offense scoring at the end of the game, the more offense you have, the less points you get, to the point where if you actually have more than 6 offense, you're actually going to start to lose victory points instead of just gain them for having less offense. So then if you completely then draw 2 cards when neither of them match, then you completely fall on your face. You are a dolt. I actually don't offend them whatsoever because, you know, you're just so stupid that you can't even be offended by that much idiocy. That is the basis of my channel. And so then you go down to the bottom of the card where you take, it says 1 card per person. And so the leader here is going to draw 1 card per person. They are going to then draft and pass. I take the wild, I pass these 2 to the other people, and then that's what that round is. And then you go over here to the empowerment. Empowerment is also going to be player count dependent because, as I said, 2 to 5 players. And these down here are the rewards that you'll be doing. And in the empowerment phase, it's kind of like Scout, if you know Scout, right? You just play symbols to beat the previous person. And you stop once you beat the previous person and it goes on to the next person. If you pass, you're out though. And that's where these tokens come in, because that's going to determine not only who gets what reward, but also the leader for the next single round that you're doing this. And so that's the balancing act that you're trying to always negotiate. When is it better to push my luck, spend more of my cards, get a better reward, but then also have a lot less for later? And so what you're going to be doing is, again, you're going to look at these 2 symbols and you're going to lay these cards down that are going to be matching to them, including those pink wild cards that I mentioned. And again, you're wondering, how do you decide the rewards based on the player counts? Well, you have these fancy dancy little just segments. And so if you have only 2 players, you cover it up like this and you have these 2. And so if you're first, you would get your choice of either a power card or an offense, right? You choose the power card. And if you played with 3 people, then only 2 are covered. And if you played only with 4 people, 1 is covered. And if you played with all 5 are available and you get your choice right there. And we didn't talk about this, but these 2 icons right here are the power cards that I had set up down below. These power cards are basically just powerful, extra duty, awesome cards. And there are 3 different types. One, the white background that gets played into your hand like a normal one. You can see that each of these cards actually has 3 icons here instead of just the usual 1 that's on the side there. Then you have greens, which are immediate. In this case, discard 2 offense. In this case, get 5 victory points. Or the yellows that sit in front of you and can be discarded when you want to play them. Ignore a risk, like we just talked about, of drawing the cards. Ignore the risk and the consequences as if you never took it. Or say, for example, retrieve your cards from negotiation. If you're the first to leave a negotiation, retrieve all your cards. Because the other thing I didn't say is that when I start playing these cards for this negotiation empowerment right here, when you're done, you lose all of those cards. All of those cards go to the discard pile. So that's the press your luck. How many of these am I willing to discard in order to get the reward I want? Main element of the game that you are doing on every single board right here, as you can see. And even at the end phase, arrival one has it. And the main difference that I talked about with the red board very briefly is that you can see that all of these rewards are just less bad, right? You get the less bad one in that one. So that's what you're dealing with. And so you could just take that one out if you're not a big fan and use the yellow one and never have to worry about this negging side of things. The last other major element that I didn't really mention, but is part of the negotiation phase, as we talked about with the risk phase, where you can do it for these icons, you can actually do the same exact risk risk during the negotiation phase as well here, though, but it's a lot higher risk and a lot higher, well, potential reward, because you're looking at your hand going, okay, I don't have enough cards. So you can do the same thing in the risk phase that you did during the negotiation phase. But the problem is, if you don't pull both of these icons, if I don't pull both of those icons right there, then I immediately lose the negotiation. I'm immediately out. I immediately pass. It's, you know, relatively detrimental if you're, well, not lucky sometimes in those ways. That is the element, and then all of these have sort of a little deluxified supply at the end here, and this, unlike the other with the negotiation rewards, this is one person per reward. The supply over here is anybody can choose anything any number of times, so everybody could choose to draw 2 cards, everybody could choose to get 3 victory points, everyone could choose to get rid of one of their offenses. The last thing I did not mention of the negotiation phase of this is when you pass, you grab in reverse order, essentially. So if I was playing with 3 people, the first person out would grab the 3 marker, the 2 marker, and then the 1 marker for the last person that remains. And then that is the reverse order, obviously, 1, 2, 3, that you would get to choose the rewards, and then 1 becomes the mission leader, which means they get to go first on all of these later, including those little drafts and the press your lucks. So that is the balancing act of, do you want that? How big of a deal is it? Let me show you a little bit of gameplay here so you can kind of see the dynamic, and then we'll talk about a little bit of the expansion content and my final thoughts. So then let's talk about the actual gameplay right here. You take your super ship and you put it at the start column of the board, and this tells you what you get. And so on the bottom of the board, you'll see that I have a 5 card hand that I've already pre-drawn here. And you'll see that you have a marketplace of 5 of these power cards that we'll get to when we get to the scoring here for the negotiation. We'll slide these out of the way so that you can see first player over here, second player over here. So the first thing that you're going to be doing is you're going to be then going to the next column. This column allows you to either discard 2 cards to draw 2 additional cards. And that's important because you actually have to discard 2. And I have the ability to risk here if I want, like we talked about, and then I'm going to be drafting, and then I'm going to be going over here for the negotiation, and I want purple and orange. So I have a wild, I have an orange, and then I have ones that aren't really going to be beneficial. Now, if I draw these in the risk, that's not going to be bad, but neither of these are going to help me. So I'm going to discard 2 of these, and I'm going to draw 2 of these as well right here. And purples, okay, great. And now this isn't the risk, this is this phase, because I could also risk it again. Now player 2 is taking a look at their cards, and they actually like their hand. That's a great hand for this. So they're just going to stay steady there. So then you go over to the risk phase, and this is again where if I didn't like these cards, I could pull 2 from the top, risk getting offense there if I don't match both of them. If I only match 1, I would have to get offense. If I don't match either, I just discard them and don't keep them. So if I drew this, okay, then first player here, they'd have to discard the card that doesn't match, and then they'd have to get 2 offense to player 1. We'll just do that for the sake of the argument here, and they'll keep the 2 offense. Player 2 has all the cards matching, so they don't want to. So then we go down here and you draft a card per player and go around until everybody is getting 1 of them. So then this is actually great. Player 1 is going to take the wild. Player 2 actually ends up with a purple. So now comes the negotiation phase of things. So then as the 2-player reward here, I have the ability to block off this with the 2 players, which means one person's going to get a power card, one person's going to get an offense. Now, if I had 3 people, I would only have this disc in place, and then you can see 3 rewards. Or if I had 4 people, I would just use this disc to block off. Or if you had 5 people, you would keep all the rewards. But let's go back to this case, and then I'm going to have that there. And so what you do is your scout-esque vibe, where you start with the starting player, and they bid however many cards they want, or they pass. If they pass, you are out, and you can't get back in. And why that matters is because once you pass, you grab the highest token remaining, which then determines turn order later. It also determines reward on the power wheel. So then the second player would go, and they have to beat that. But once they beat it, they have to stop. So 2 right there, and then again, okay, 2, and then 3, and then it goes back to the first person. They're going to go 3, 4, and so you go back and forth until somebody can't beat it. 5, and this starts to get where you're trying to decide how many of these cards do I actually want to spend and press my luck. When do I want to save cards for the next round, because cards are your lifeblood. So right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're going to play 5, 6. and then goes back over to player one, and they say, you know what, I could beat it if I want to, but I need some cards for next round, so I'm going to pass. I'm going to take this second token, and then you discard your cards to the discard pile there, and then only one person remaining, so they get the thing here, they get the discard there. Now they, as the first player priority, get to choose their token. They are then going to take their power card here, and you know what, if they would have gotten the offense from the risk, they could have used that right away. They could get 5 victory points, or they could get a card here, and this 3 might be beneficial because you're going to be going ahead and looking and knowing what the next tile is. And I know that, okay, well, am I going to need this for the next board? I'm not, so maybe I'm not going to take this yet, and maybe I'm actually just going to take the immediate 5 victory points, and I would cash that in and get 5 victory points right away. And then unfortunately now player one gets another offense, and they're up to 3 offense. Then you go to the last and the supply, where you have a smattering of just basic rewards, and everybody different from the negotiation here, 1 person per reward for these. People can double up or triple up, however many up on this. So for example, you know what, I really would like to get rid of these offenses, but I only have 3 cards in my hand, and this person only has 2 cards, so they're actually going to both take the 2 cards here. And so you can start to see the replenishing of the hand. Then what you do is you would go over to the next board, which I have conveniently set up below, and you go right here. Then you're going to be drawing, as you can see in the upper left hand corner here again, the bag, and you're going to be drawing from the bag. And so then player one now is over here, and they get one of the alliance tokens, which is actually a 2 credit. And then player 2 draws, well, this is one of the expansions we'll talk about later, gets rid of 2 offense. So I would actually just get rid of 2 offense. But if I did not include the expansion one there, I would actually just draw and get a credit one instead there as well. And then you would see how you're going to be able to go through and do this column wise exactly the same. This would be drafting 2 cards per player and passing. This would be the risk with these 2 if you wanted to with that. And then again, negotiation here that you would block off, and then a slightly different aspect thing for the supply reward over here, where you have credits for alliance tokens for offense, getting rid of, that is, and then alliance tokens for victory points. And what this means here is you can see that there's a number on the credits, which means that's a total number of credits. And what that means is you need to have that total sum, because these credits actually have lines on them, as you can see here, a 1 and a 2. So a sum total of 3 would get rid of that. If this did not have a number in on it and only had 4 tokens there as a whole, you'd have to get rid of 4 individual credit tokens, no matter what their value is, in order to get the reward. And with the arrows here, these are optional. You do not have to do them, but you do have to do the left side to get the right side. And so that's the game in a nutshell. You go until you get all the way through all 5 boards. Now we have to talk about the last board though, because the last board is a little bit different. The last board actually just allows you to have one last negotiation here with more suits in general, but then it also has a little bit higher risk and reward. But then at the end, you are actually rewarded for all of the extra icons, which is, from what I've been told, a difference between that and Beowulf, where this actually matters. So each 3 icons are going to get you 5 points. If you have 3 wilds, or if you have 5 tokens or 10 credits, that's going to get you 10, 15, or 15 points. And then you do the end game scoring with the offense like we mentioned. So there is a little bit of expansion content to go with it. Let me show you what that looks like, and then we'll go into my final thoughts. So the first module here is a sideboard, an expansion board, that basically just makes each of your areas a little bit bigger. It gives them just another place to get rewards from. For example, over here on the ship, the solar system, you actually have a chance for everyone to be able to get a power card no matter what, even though it may come with a little bit better or a little bit worse benefit. The second part is just a transmission. If you have those, you get the reward. Very straightforward. You just do it as an extension of that part of the board. Similarly, the yellow one here, transmission, a different negotiation, and this is actually a credit spend, where you do similarly that we talked about with the actual card laying of the other icons in the negotiation phase as well, but in this case you're actually doing it with credits, the yellow ones that I was showing you earlier, and you just do the same exact thing. If you do it and you're the most, you get a big reward. If you're the least, you get a big casualty, and if you're in the middle, you just kind of get nothing sometimes, which again isn't so bad, right? And then the last element of things is the ships that are going to be going along in between, and essentially all you do is you kind of just move these aside, and you have these in between them as a whole, and they just add little lay points between each of the ships. So again, a transmission in the sense that if you have all 4 of these icons, you show them, you don't discard when you see the transmission icon, and then you get that reward right there. Similarly, again, if you just show the most in this case, rather than just having them, then you're either getting rewarded a card if you're not highest or lowest, or an offense if you're the lowest. So you got to be careful again, but it adds another element that you can interlock, that you can do with the sideboards, without the sideboards, however you so choose, in between all of those different areas. One last thing to go along with these little sideboards here is that you have a little additional alliance tokens, which again just allow you to get offense or allow you to draw cards that are very similarly shaped on the backside of things. So you just toss them into the bag and you just go with it. So final thoughts here: pros, cons, who's going to like a new revamped large ego? Like I alluded to at the beginning, they know that they're sending it to me. That's for a reason. I like this game a lot. I was really worried about negotiation, bidding, auction. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? It's awesome. It gives me more of a raw vibe with the pressure luck style rather than a fractured sky when you're sort of bidding and bluffing and wondering who's who. And I say that as it's light. It's meant to be fast and streamlined. They really have made this achieve that. Even with the sideboards here that you add on, even with the interstellar ships, moving through these spaces on the board, it is snappy, it's quick, it's paced. And the biggest make it or break it, like I said, is that risk element of things. When you just grab 2 cards off the top of the deck, or 3, depending on, you know, where you're at and what can you do to manipulate things. Yeah, that is a huge gamble. But it also falls forward sometimes, because if one matches, that's really the only time you get screwed, and that's most of the time that you're going to gather up the offense. But if you have neither that match, you just fall completely on your face, and you get to keep your cards, especially during the risk event. Not so much during negotiation, but during the risk event, and you just get to keep the cards later. And so it allows you to, well, have them for later times. And so you might not get these 2, but you might get one that benefits here. So I pull 2 of these into this. Well, I don't get the negative here, but I'm going to have the positive for this. So it was ultimately worth it. And then here is the biggest, you know, probably lost element of things that people are going to criticize for this game of being too luck driven. You're going through 5 of these boards. So if it doesn't work now, you're best off licking your wounds, going out early, and stacking yourself up for the next board or 2, because you can see what's coming when and to what extent. Even at the end game, when you see the arrival board and you know that 3 of a kind is going to get you 5 points and 3 of those wilds are going to get you 10, wowzers, right? That's not insignificant. So you might just say screw it on the last negotiation, because it really might benefit you more. But you got to be thinking ahead a little bit to negotiate, to mitigate that luck-driven aspect. Because yes, it's heavily luck-driven, but part of luck is what you get, but part of luck is also what you make of it once you have it. And that is the element that is going to get overlooked with this game, is this is how I make apple pie out of apples. It's not just I didn't get the right apples, I'm screwed. It's I got these apples that weren't immediately the most beneficial apples for me. I was able to turn them, though, 3 rounds later into significant benefit. And that's why it's freaking amazing. I will make the argument, though, that I'm not sure I would play without some of the additional elements, right? The additional icons here with the alliances of getting rid of the offenses and drawing 2 cards. You know what? Cards are your mainstay lifeblood. And so I really like this. So I would just throw those in there and keep them in there. Never take them out, period. You know, the ships, again, the transmissions are nice because transmissions don't make you actually lose the cards, and you still get a benefit, because that's the other thing that's going to cheese people off is I spent them and I lost them and I lost too many. You got to be careful when and how much you're spending on a time by time, round by round basis. That matters. I mean, even the sideboards to make the ships larger as well. Again, I don't really see a downside. It makes it slightly longer. Because of how fast you're going through these areas, it just is snappy. I mean, the bidding is you either do it or you don't do it. There is not much AP on this. It's very little. And the game is not going to be lengthened extremely much so by this. It's going to give it just some meatier depth. but you could streamline it. Sort of like I was just looking at other game tonight where they're saying 50, 60, or 70 points. So you could just play the 51, still get the full experience of the game, and just have it be shorter in general. And that's what these expansions are offering. The other reason I would probably, argue for these incorporations almost every single time, right? Especially like this first one with the solar system, is that you have the power cards. The power cards that just give you a slight, cool, one-time-ish use ability. And that is what I want more of. Like, I want to be able to use these. Without it, the first time we played through, I mean, we got like 3 power cards, right? And that's kind of anticlimactic, right? They're power cards! Give me some power! Right? That's what you want out of this game. You want the best stuff more. And so that's why, because it adds the more, but it doesn't add the more or the more side of things that you're always worried about with a game like this as well. And this, I mean, this isn't a big deal, right? You've got the same stuff that you're just getting, occasionally that way, but then you get them this way, but then you also can trade them in, not just for the colored side, but for the blue side as well. And that just makes it flow smoothly. The only small thing that you could say is, player count dependent with the pie pieces, right? As you're putting them on the rewards, depending on how many player counts, because that's always going to be the same. 2 players are always going to have this reward. 3 players are always going to have these 3. 4 players and 5 players again. So if you really wanted to get exciting, I'm not going to ask Nick how he feels about this or the good old doctor, but I mean, you could do that if you wanted to, but it would change things because then essentially like this one, right? You might overlap the one negative that's there and then everyone will get positive. But you know what? You could easily do that in your group and you just don't have to tell anybody you're house ruling it. You could still get away with it. So that is just the minor of minor things. And so how do I actually feel about this? Well, if it's any surprise at this point, I really like this game. I am not a big fan of bidding. Bidding just doesn't sit well with me usually. Usually it just falls flat and I just kind of find myself going, whatever, right? But I like this. It's bidding scout style, outbid your opponent that way, rather than just like QE bid it and say, well, I'm going to bid $3 million to your 7. And you're like, what? Like, is that a good bid or is that a bad bid? Or even Isle of Skye, which is another game I love, but you end up with this huge pile of money and you don't realize, especially a first couple games, or even if you're, a couple games in like I am, right? That, how much do I actually bid at the end? How much is it going to take to get somebody to buy this where that press point is not too little, not too much? I'm not, under appreciating it, but I'm also not overpricing it, right? Like I'm horrible at that. I just kind of like toss baby out with the bathwater sometimes and hope I get lucky. This gives you that element without that feeling. And so for me, it frickin' works well. And you play it in like half an hour. Half a frickin' hour. The iconography looks super complex on the table. It's so straightforward. That is such a breath of fresh air, not having to figure out what all of these are and wondering which one goes to when and how it's going to. No, just straightforward. It works. It's smooth. If you didn't like Beowulf, though, if you go back to the beginning of the video and you say, Chris, is this better than Beowulf? Hell yeah. If you weren't a fan of Beowulf previously, is this probably going to be drastically different enough? No, because again, the risk mitigation off of just pulling off the top of the deck is not going to be enough for you. I like the fall forward, like that's still probably not going to be enough for you. But then this game isn't probably for you either. So that's not something I would say is going to change your mind regardless. Otherwise, yeah, you're drawing chips from a bag here randomly. It's such a small element of things. This should not be the make it or break it for you. It is an element of things. It is not the element of things, right? Let's see point number 1. And the other aspect that I really love is having a handful of cards and going, okay, well, how many of these can I afford to use this time? And how many of these do I need to keep for next round? Because, in between these ships, in between these systems, you're not getting a ton of cards. You may have to choose the benefit of cards over victory points. And at what point does that actually become beneficial? Because again, you don't know if you're going to get the exact perfect cards you need, or if you're going to have to again make applesauce out of apples. So how you decide to do that may be to your delight or to your regret. Ultimately, with a game like this that plays as smooth and as fast as this does, I can overlook the pressure luck style of things because those elements of things, the enjoyment factor that the randomization of this card, you know, driven pulling can cause. And for me, it easily outweighs that. And that might not be for you. And if that's not for you, again, it's probably not a good game for you. But the management of that resource is a card-driven style of things. But as opposed to, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul, to steal from John, to take from Mark in order to, you know, resource convert, you don't need to. It does this on its own. So am I happy with this? Would I keep this in my collection? Absolutely. Abso-frickin-lutely. And I don't say that about many games. I think my only other sort of auction bidding style one is Ra, right? I got the Isle of Skye thing too, but that is really about it. And so as someone who is not typically a fan of this type of mechanism combining going on, you have converted me with this game because it's random, it's chaotic, it's tactical, and it's me. Thank you, Bitewings, for sending me this, and I love it. Hopefully that's helpful in figuring out whether or not you are going to like it, though. So there you go. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Comments, questions, or concerns down below. Good friends of the channel, I bid you adieu.